It is rainy, it is cold out, it is that prime season in Jersey where the weather just sucks, but we are still going to cook today an entire pork shoulder with a few other things I found around the supermarket. You may recognize this from a certain intro, starting out with one pork shoulder, bone in 4 to 6 pounds. Bourdain does ask for us to season this pork shoulder, however, I do this ahead of time by about 30 to 45 minutes, giving the salt a chance to penetrate the meat and also draw out some moisture. While that's hanging out, we do some quick prep, sending a garlic clove to the stratosphere. Getting a little more methodical with my prep, such as slicing first, then crushing, then peeling, and we end up with 4 garlic cloves. Another trick someone commented was to not use the sharp edge of the knife to clean the cutting board. That is a really solid move. Next, we take 2 medium onions, thinly sliced. I only had 1 mondo onion, so I went to town on this guy. Again, going with the grain here, that makes a big difference in my opinion. Follow this up with 2 chopped up carrots. I had baby carrots sitting around in my fridge, so I chopped these guys up, equivalent to what I would think would be 2 carrots. With the prep done, I bring the pork back out and give it a little pat down so we can get a nice sear on our pan. Equipping Ninja Pro and navigating the kitchen, I whip out our Dutch oven. Another variation I'm doing here, just a little splash of oil and putting the fatty side of the pork in our pan, initially cold, to hopefully render out some of this fat. To tell the truth, I don't know if this was worth our time, but we did get a little fat out of it. Now kicking the heat up to medium high, we're going in with 2 tablespoons of oil and the specialty brown butter. I was making cookies earlier and this was left over. It is basically ghee, except it has a little more flavor to it. An interesting step here, Bourdain would have us let the butter foam to see if it's hot enough. This butter will not foam because it doesn't have the properties of regular butter. So when I get a feel it's at the hottest temperature we need it, we go in with our pork, resisting the urge to move it and jostle it around. Marveling at the color we're attaining and the nutty smell we're getting from this brown butter, I continue to flip this, getting every side equally browned and taking it as far as I can. But after about 15 to 20 minutes, we've achieved a nice browning on this pork, and now it gets interesting. Bourdain actually instructs us to discard this blackened butter and start fresh. However, when I'm looking at this, it looks just like brown butter when I made it way back with cookies. Obviously a little more savory, but we go in with the vegetables and I just sit on the idea of adding this to saute. And I go for it. I add it in there. I don't think Bourdain would go against this move. I think we have lovely flavor, and screw it. Let's just add the whole thing while we're at it. We're going to cook our vegetables over medium heat until they get nice and brown. Took me about 3 to 4 minutes. Follow this up with 2 tablespoons of flour and give this a stir. Again, developing a really nice little fond on the bottom of our pan. It's kind of cool. I can show you in real time the color of the fond I try to attain just before adding our liquid. Right here, that is the perfect level of browning for me. Now AB calls for beer. I had Peroni, I don't know how to say it, but it's Italian, and I'm no beer drinker, but I enjoyed this and was happy to add nearly the entire bottle to our mixture. Cranking up the heat to high and scraping away, adding 1 cup of chicken stock. While we're bringing this up to a boil, I noticed we have a bit of an issue. The pork is too freaking tall for the Dutch oven. Bourdain calls for a tall pot. We have a small Dutch oven. So I ended up cutting the thing. I kind of butchered it. I did not do a great job, but it now fits. This is going to hang out at a very low simmer, about a 1 for me on my burner, for 2 hours. In the meantime, making a sweet potato mash. Skinning 2 medium-sized sweet potatoes and struggling greatly to chop these things. I don't know if you have tips to chop a sweet potato, but if you do, fire away. I got these in about 2 3-inch chunks and tossed them into some heavily seasoned boiling water. These are going to boil away for about 10 to 15 minutes until they get very tender. Now I came to a bit of a roadblock. Bourdain calls for breadcrumbs, unseasoned, untoasted. All I have are these Italian panko things. So it's time to improvise a bit. I think every family has some bread that is going bad, so why not whip out this rock hard ciabatta roll and go to town. Cutting this into cubes along with a little Licios bun I had also. I throw these in our little toaster oven that could for about half an hour at a very low temp of like 200 degrees, 250. I can't really remember. And ignore that muscle milk. That's not my muscle milk. It's my brother's. Anyway, coming back to our boiling sweet taters, they're nice and soft. I strain these and then glug a few tablespoons of olive oil in our pot. The sweet potatoes go back in, and as much as I would love to use a ricer, I just have a classic potato masher. And guess what I'm gonna throw in here? Some brown butter. I still have more brown butter. It's just going to add an amazing nutty caramely flavor. And a little kiss from some maple syrup, real maple syrup. I was pretty happy with how these turned out. Get these off to our little tiny burner just to hang out. And we have one more thing to make. Some freaking dandelion greens I saw on sale. Giving a taste, doing my best impression of a groundhog. These were pretty freaking bitter. I've never had anything quite as bitter as a dandelion green, but I do know one trick to help with some bitterness. Slicing these greens about 2 inches thick and then going with half an onion. Treating this similar to broccoli rabe, I also grab a garlic clove and thinly slice that. Now we blanch these things. This is a trick to reduce bitterness. I don't know why, I don't know the science behind it, but at 2 minutes of a rolling boil, I whip them out and let them hang out on a plate. Time to saute everything up with about 2 tablespoons of avocado oil, adding our onions first, letting them caramelize a little bit and adding a little salt just to extract some moisture and increase the speed at which they caramelize. Then adding the garlic clove and a little crushed red pepper and cooking this until it is fragrant. I do not want to brown this garlic. Now adding our extremely bitter, assumingly good for you greens, cooking them for about a minute. Next, to try and brighten this up and add a little kick, I go with some apple cider vinegar, cooking this down, and we are finished. Kind of happy with how this looks, and I think it is actually one thing that I've made on this channel that is quite good for me. Giving this a taste, I'm pretty impressed actually with the flavor. Who would have thought trading an ingredient that tastes like another one would result in something delicious? Our bread cubes have dried out but not toasted, which is exactly what I wanted. Then these go in my least favorite thing in the world to clean, a food processor. And I figure just add some thyme I had lying around to these breadcrumbs. We give this a few hits with the pulse on the food processor and we've got some solid breadcrumbs. Time flew doing all this stuff and the pork is finished. Pull this out and allow it to cool just a little bit. Here it gets fun taking Dijon mustard and painting our entire pork, being very generous here. I freaking love Dijon mustard and we need something for our breadcrumbs to stick to. Trying to be a little efficient here with the mess we're going to make, I throw the pork on a grate and go to town, sprinkling the breadcrumbs and pressing them into the pork, not rubbing, because if I rub, they are going to just get all mushy and Dijon mustard paste-like. Now we take this to the oven at 450 to get those breadcrumbs nice and browned up for about 10 minutes. I'm learning it almost isn't French unless you strain some type of cooking liquid through a sieve to make a delicious sauce, which is what we're doing here. And I didn't strain everything because, as you can see, the strainer I got is from Build-A-Bear. Bring this up to a boil and simmer it, reducing the mixture for about 10 to 15 minutes. The pork definitely came out nice. I really like the color we got, a little blackening there. Coming back to our sauce, we add some Dijon mustard. Bourdain would call for 2 tablespoons. I just did a little hit of it. Follow this up with a tablespoon of cold butter and whisk this off heat to get a nice silky, rounded out sauce that the French are just masters at attaining. So now the fun part, and if you know your way around a pig shoulder, I advise you to look away because I have no clue what I'm doing. Going down with my knife until I hit that bone and then sort of scooping away these pieces of meat that it works. I guess it works. Really, the goal here, as you know, is to just get some really nice slices for a presentation. Speaking of, let's whip out our black plate. Off the cuff here, I just spoon our sweet mashed potatoes in the middle. You're damn straight I saw that little splatter there. Get that out of here. Our sauteed dandelion onion green mixture is going to go on top, and follow that up with 3 nice slices of this breadcrumb encrusted pork. Spoon the sauce around the pork, which I didn't even have to season. It was so freaking lovely. The flavor is amazing there. Give this a little cleanup, and I'm pretty happy with this randomly composed dish we have. I kind of just took what I saw was on sale and then tried to cater the flavors to work together. Giving a taste, the pork is definitely a little chewy, but I think it just needed to cook longer. This definitely seems like a bit of a theme with the cookbook in general when cooking certain meats low and slow, but the flavor overall of the pork is amazing. With that Dijon crust, I think I am definitely going to utilize in the future. And the sweet potatoes are nice and round with a little bite and crunch and acid from the dandelion greens. I'm pretty happy with this. And this is actually kind of funny. I didn't know we were recording. Today was a bit of a bitch, I'm not gonna lie. But this is kind of vintage, like, Mitch, okay, let's get cleaning. Thanks for spending your time with me. This was Back to Bourdain.